to
the Marriage Comeback podcast.
And we're on episode 5, and we did skip a week.
We did, and we apologize. This has been harder than we thought because of timing and filming. We have 4 kids who are all involved, and we have sports every night. We both work full time.
And our one day of recording and stuff, if we don't feel great and don't feel like we want to do it, we don't.
So anyways, that's what happened. We're going to try to be more on top of it. But it's important to us that when we do film, we have good energy and can give you guys the best of us. So
yeah, but we try not to skip, but unfortunately we did. But thank you for staying with us. And if this is your first episode listening,
welcome.
First off, welcome. Second off, I do suggest and recommend going back and listening to episodes 1 through 4 because it will make a lot more sense to what we're talking about and discussing if you have listened to those previous episodes.
Yes.
What are we going to talk about today?
So today we're going to talk about how to have hard conversations, how to have arguments and disagreements in your relationship, which is a skill that needs to be learned. And when we had been married for 10 years before our stuff went down, and we had to relearn how to do this.
Yeah, if you don't know how to do it, there can be some very hurtful, damaging conversations that you will both regret.
Yeah.
And if you learn how to, if you learn how to have difficult conversations and have difficult arguments, the better it can be for your relationship.
And sometimes arguments are big and sometimes they're small. Sometimes they might seem not important to one party, but it's important to be able to handle them maturely, talk through them, validate each other's feelings, and move forward. And this is also such a good skill to learn in all of your relationships, just not your romantic partner relationship.
For sure. Work, friends, family, kids, neighbors, church.
All of it. It's not fun to have these hard conversations.
I mean, years, later, 7, 8 years later, we still have difficult conversations that we need to have. And
we still use these tools that we have learned. So that's what we're going to talk about today so that we can help you guys hopefully on your journey as well with your relationships. So the biggest thing is you always want your partner to feel seen, heard, and loved. And it might be hard if you are going through something like we went through, where one person has betrayed the other and it's really hurtful. For me, I had to be kind of put in my place a little bit with my bishop and my therapist telling me, he's not a bad person because he made a mistake. That was kind of a hurdle that I had to, because I was so angry, to really, just because somebody made a mistake, it does not mean that they're a bad person and that you can label them that way. And they deserve respect as well. And if I chose to decide to stay and work on our relationship. So I made that choice. So we are a team and we're working together, not against each other.
Which I think was huge for me, that not finally, but when you were able to really come to the conclusion that we were working together on our marriage, on our children, on our parenting, on our relationship, that we were working together on it, that really helped me.
And that was, I feel like, when our change and our growth, when we were able to start and accelerate, is when I got to that point where I was like, okay, we've done the disclosure and the full transparency and all of that stuff. And, I have got a lot of what I needed to say out, and now there comes a point where you have to choose to move forward. You can't just stay there. Let's move forward together and make this happen. And what really helped me when I was struggling was trying to see you through Christ's eyes. And I thought of Christ. And when he was on this earth, he was always walking with the sinners. He was always in the dirt, and he wasn't up in the temple all the time with the perfect people, the wealthy people. He was down on his knees, helping people with the sinners, showing them that they are valued and loved. And I think of Christ and his going to find that lost sheep, right? Like he is going to go find that one, and he wants him to work through his sins and to come back and to be forgiven. And he wants nothing more than that. So when I was able to see you through Christ's eyes, that was really big.
Well, I think that was one of the biggest parts of kind of our growth is when you really had a hard time, early on, forgiving me and getting, I wouldn't say past it, but getting kind of through it. And I remember having that conversation with you when you told me that. You were like, I'm feeling a lot better. I'm understanding the atonement a little bit more. I'm understanding forgiveness a little bit more. And when you said what you just said to me about seeing your imperfection, seeing you through Christ's eyes, I think that was a huge step in our relationship. I think, it was huge for me. I know hearing it from you, but you hearing it that way, I believe helped you as well in our growth.
And I think so. If you're struggling with your partner, really try to see each other that way, and that can help as you're going into these hard conversations.
Because you're if you've both committed on working through this together, you're a team.
Yeah.
You're a team at that point. Yes, it is not easy. There's a long road ahead, but you have both decided to work on this as a team. So going into this,
I hadn't forgiven you yet either, and I was working towards that, and we will do an episode on forgiveness, but it did help to get to this point for us.
For sure. And those hard conversations, those got better and better. What hard conversations can people expect?
Well, we talked about triggers last week. So obviously when you're feeling triggered, your emotions are high.
Always is. That's a hard conversation. Every time a trigger comes up.
Always. Parenting, when you have a parenting or financial stuff, or
sometimes schedules don't align. I'm late from work. I'm late from this place. I'm late for that.
It was interesting in our group therapy. I remember, what were the things that they said? If you are struggling with your marriage, don't do these things. Move.
Oh.
It was like move.
Move was one.
There was something
else.
Have a child. Have a baby. Change a job. Like certain things that are stressful.
Try to eliminate.
For a normal relationship that isn't struggling, just try to avoid those if you can. Because
hard conversations are anything from, just little basic things to major things. And obviously the more major they get, the more difficult they are. So that's why they say those. Think about those decisions. Until we can teach you a little bit more and you can kind of get your emotions together, let's not add another layer on top of it. Well, yeah, think about the decisions of going into a house, babies, finances. Like those aren't easy conversations without kind of dealing with some things inside the relationship. So hard conversations. Here we're going to go through some tips.
We learned about this thing called the drama triangle.
I hated learning about this because I realized that I loved being in it.
Yes. And so this totally helps us when we are in a hard conversation with each other, with anybody else.
At work, when I've had a conversation, I'm like, ooh, I'm acting like this person, or I'm acting like that person.
Okay. Exactly. So that drama triangle is a triangle. And so there's 3 people in the triangle.
Well, no, 3 types of people.
3 types on each point.
Yeah.
Okay. So one side is the rescuer. They like to save people that they think are vulnerable. Okay. They work hard to offer help, even if it's unsolicited. Like they're going to give you your 2 cents.
Mm-hmm.
Their 2 cents no matter what. So they're the rescuer.
And then the persecutor, unaware of their own power. They're the attacker usually. The power is negative and very destructive.
And then the last point is the victim, and they feel overwhelmed by vulnerability. They like to blame everybody else about the situation. They don't take any responsibility of themselves. So you have these 3 different people or traits, and you can bounce around.
Oh yeah, you're not the victim every time in a conversation. You're not the persecutor every time in the conversation. In a conversation, you can go from a victim to a persecutor.
Yes, in the same argument, you can move from one to the other. But knowing what like your main one is, and then kind of like what you go to next as yourself, that is a huge thing to know.
So understanding these roles are quite important. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into each. Just if you're sitting there listening and you're like, oh, what am I usually? Let us dive just a little deeper.
Yeah, and the whole goal of the drama triangle is to not be in the drama triangle at all. And the persecutor, the victim, and the rescuer are going to try to bring you in the drama triangle, and your goal is to not be in it.
Yes, and the reason why we need drama. We need drama in our life. We fuel on drama.
It's like a natural human thing for us too.
We're used to gossiping, to moaning and complaining. We love to blame. Until you realize how hurtful that is, and the way of how it is, the cost of living like that and having those conversations with others.
With all of that internal drama, instead of looking inwards at yourself and figuring out you, understanding your partner, and being able to work through that.
Yeah, so we're just a little deeper on these 3. A rescuer is someone who often does not own their vulnerability and seeks instead to rescue those that are vulnerable. The traits of a rescuer is that they often do more than 50% of the work, that they may offer help that's unasked, kind of like you just said. They're there to rescue her.
But then they feel resentful and used, and they kind of like
hold on to
that inside of themselves. Like they want to help
at a cost.
Yeah,
exactly. The persecutor, the position of a persecutor is synonymous with being unaware of one's own power and therefore discounting it. Either way, the power used is negative, like I said, destructive. Any player in the game may at any time be experienced as a persecutor. So we like we talked about, you can bounce, all around. But the persecutor is malicious, destructive.
They're like the attacker. They're the loud. They're the confrontation. They're the, I feel like they're the ones that like word vomit. And they don't know how to.
They feel safe by hurting others and putting down others. The victim is someone who usually feels overwhelmed by their own sense of vulnerability, inadequacy, or powerlessness, and does not take responsible for themselves or their own power, and therefore looks for a rescuer to take care of them. Getting out of the drama triangle means at some point the victim may feel let down by their rescuer. I used to be this a lot. I feel like. You think that I'm more of a persecutor in a lot of our conversations?
I think at the beginning of our marriage, yes, you were more the persecutor, because I felt like when we would argue, I would get really quiet and you know how to push buttons. And the thing with a persecutor is you can move on from a conversation, but like I never forget what was said.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can forgive and I can move on. The forgive and forget, it's hard to forget some of those mean things a persecutor can say to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember early on in our marriage, you were like, you're so good at pushing buttons and you're so good at finding things to hurt. And that hurt me knowing that like you thought like I was
And you would
good
get
at that.
and you would get frustrated when I would be quiet. You know, like it's like you wanted to hash it out, and I did the silent treatment, which that's very toxic and unhealthy. So yeah, we both have had to put in a lot of work in this.
Yeah, and as of today, I mean, I can immediately know the drama triangle
Mm-hmm.
because I've learned about it. I'm understanding it, and it's pretty apparent when you are getting pulled into the triangle or you're actually in it. The hard thing is getting out of it.
The hard thing is regulating your own emotions to look inward at yourself. So taking those deep breaths and being like, okay, what am I feeling right now? How am I affecting this conversation? What is my part in this hurt or whatever we might be discussing? And taking ownership of that, but also having boundaries. So we'll do another episode on boundaries, but in the drama triangle, if you have unhealthy boundaries, that's how people drag you into the drama triangle. And you creating healthy boundaries helps you stay out of it. So, for example, maybe you need a little bit of time and space to process your feelings. So, just expressing to your partner, whoever you're in the triangle with or a hard conversation with, I'm feeling a lot of big emotions right now. I need a little bit of space. I would love to revisit this conversation maybe in 2 hours, or I'll call you tonight, or can we talk about this tomorrow morning?
Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. It is understanding. It is that, but one word that we haven't used yet in these conversations that I know when we were taking notes was a big word that we haven't used is being mature.
Yes.
Is going into this conversation maturely.
Mm-hmm.
If you go into it and you haven't thought about it and you're just going into this hard conversation and you're not mature about it, you aren't open to this conversation, it can get out of hand fast and you're in the drama triangle right away. But going into it maturely and understanding where this conversation needs to go, I think is absolutely vital.
Yes, and we're going to give you some tips on how to stay out of the drama triangle.
Or to get out of it.
Or to get out when you're in it.
So we are going to give some steps on tips, bullet points,
whatever you want to call it.
Whatever you want to call it to refer back to that can help you in these hard conversations. And you think they're going to be elementary answers. They're not. When you're in the heat of the moment, when you're in the heat of a tough, discussion, conversation, whatever you want to call it, these are some steps, and we use these.
We still struggle with some of them too.
For sure. Number 1, responding and communicating maturely. Just kind of like I just explained, responding and communicating maturely. Some notes on that is take a deep breath and try to stay calm, which I do every single day. And this isn't with Kelly. This is work. This is when I'm in my car, stressed out, or when I'm going to go into a conversation that I don't love. Taking deep breaths and staying calm. I think this is probably one of the biggest ones here with being mature is avoid attacking, being defensive, and blaming language. I was and kind of still am the king of defensive.
Defense.
Yeah. And Kelly will just gladly tell me.
Okay, well, here's the thing. If I come to you and express like, hey, that hurt my feelings when such and such happened, and you immediately turn it against me,
it's defensive, and it totally eliminates one of the other steps, and we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But attacking and defensive and blaming language can get you.
That's like manipulative, right? It's manipulating. It's pushing it off of you.
Listen actively, being attentive. Avoid making assumptions until it's clarifying. So that's the first step.
Yeah. Okay. The second step was huge for me. Body language. Body language during an argument speaks so much louder than words to me. If we're having a conversation and you're not facing me and your arms are folded and like I say something and you roll your eyes, but yet you're telling me everything I want to hear, like, I love you. Roll my eyes, roll my head back, right? That is such mixed signals.
You definitely are attentive on body language.
Like I'm like, well, you sound like you're saying the right things. Like you sound like this, but like, I don't feel it.
Where's my hug? I'm like, okay, but I'm still focused on the conversation about body language. I get so maintaining eye contact, being attentive.
Like open up your body to each other, face each other. Don't be closed off, looking away, rolling your eyes. How you were just doing it with me, like nodding your head and agreeing, like being attentive. So I understand that you are listening to what I'm saying, right?
No, for sure. Body language is massive. If you're, not looking at each other and just the conversation is not going anywhere.
It's the actions speak louder than words. So it's really hard. And when you're building back up trust, this is a huge thing, right? When you're working on trust, which we were, I needed the validation. I needed to believe what you were saying. But when your body language isn't mirroring what your words are saying, it's mixed feelings to me. And it's hard for me because I'm already really weary and not trusting. So really focus on your body language. And when you're having these conversations with your kids,
body language is
huge. They pick up on that. You need to get down on their eye level, hold them. For us, like there's even like safe touching where it would be just like hand on the leg or holding hands or something.
Number 3 is using the I feel statements. I feel instead of using the word you, it's I feel, and you're really good at this. And when we get into these conversations, or if something's off or if something's going on, you're very good at letting me know through the I feel statements of how Kelly's doing, which is really good. And then I usually get defensive, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it. But it's using the I feel.
What does that
I'm
mean?
feeling.
Like,
it's opening up.
A conversation. What does that mean?
It's opening up. You're explaining your feelings in a non-hurtful, attacking way.
Yeah, so much of a hard conversation is based on delivery, how you say it, your tone, right? So instead of me being like, you didn't take the trash out, you're whatever, I say, it hurt my feelings.
That you didn't listen to me.
That I feel like you didn't respect me when I asked you to take out the trash. That really hurt my feelings. I'm feeling a little sad because of that. That's just a little tiny example.
Yeah, that's obviously a tiny example, but the big point to avoid there is using the I feel statements to manipulate.
Right. Like, I feel anxious right now because I'm triggered, and I feel sad that you didn't respond how I need you to respond when I'm feeling triggered.
Yeah. So the I feel is, and And the biggest thing is both of you understand when someone is sharing the I feel statements to respect those statements.
Because everybody is allowed to have their feelings.
Correct. And that kind of leads into number 4 is validating those feelings, validating the I feel statements, validating your emotions, validating what's troubling you.
I hear you. I
yes.
see how that could be offensive.
Sometimes in those situations, I have absolutely no idea what Kelly is going through, what triggered her right then, in something so minute or small in my world at that point is not for Kelly. And it's something that she needs to discuss and talk through. And if I'm sitting there just like, okay, that's like the dumbest thing ever, that doesn't validate, that doesn't help. That all that does is close her off and sends her down kind of a darker hole. So,
and sometimes a conversation, all it needs is to be validated. Like sometimes that's all your partner needs is that validation to move forward from that. So not dismissing their feelings, but seeing them, hearing them.
Absolutely.
Okay, so taking breaks is the next step. So sometimes, and we kind of talked about this with your boundaries, taking breaks and coming back to revisit those.
Those helped a lot early on.
Yes.
For both of us.
Really, when we were in the thick of it, it was, I would just get overwhelmed with stuff, and I knew I wasn't thinking rationally, or I was so high on emotion and adrenaline and all of that I knew I couldn't have a mature conversation. So taking a break or having a little bit of space. So sometimes that might be, going to separate rooms in the house. Sometimes that might mean me going out and taking a drive.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes.
And it happened a lot. And it was like, okay. So that gave me time to prepare,
cool down
myself,
process of feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And so the difference between the silent treatment, which is manipulative, where you slam the door and you leave the house or whatever, it's just talking about it maturely, the delivery.
There's an understanding that there will be a discussion.
Yes.
Just let's cool off a little bit. And when we return, we're both in a better place to have this discussion.
Yep. I need to take a break from this right now. I'm going to go on a drive. When I come back, we'll be ready to talk about it.
For sure.
And we always did our really hard conversations after our kids went to bed. Our kids were really little.
Yep.
And so if it was a really bad conversation and really needed to hash it out, we would table it till 8 p.m.
Which leads into number 6 is developing empathy and understanding your partner's needs. So during those breaks or, those silent times, I have my hand in quotes because it's not a silent treatment, but those times that you needed that space, it was myself understanding, okay, Kelly's going through something. We're going to have a discussion. I need to get ready and prepare myself and understand Kelly's needs during that. So
for sure. And our last little tip that we used this a lot too in the beginning, was writing it out. Sometimes we would be in just separate rooms texting, because for some reason when you write it, you have to think about it.
Yeah.
Like you're thinking about your words before, or sending an email, the next morning after something, to where you could really get your feelings processed through. Like
these were the really hard
but still,
times initially.
Yeah, but still, even now, like you're so much better at texting than like in-person communication. Mm-hmm. When we've had something come up.
Yeah.
Like he's like a poet and he doesn't even know it. He's really good with his words and like writing them. That's like
I'm better at it.
That's a skill to him. And I appreciate that because, and I know if we're having something and you go to work, I know I'm going to be getting a beautiful text later, where we can work through it. So it's just, and I know that about you. And so that helps us be able to communicate more.
Absolutely. And there's more, there's many others that I'm sure that everyone can use, but these are the steps that have helped us get through arguments and hard conversations. And we do it with our children. I do it at work. We do it with each other still all the time.
It's a skill that's consistent.
Yeah.
Like that you need to work on consistently.